Let's take a deep look at states. Now, when I say deep, I mean not very deep at all, because states are actually very advanced here. So what we're going to do is we are going to make another component. We're going to right click, add new, and let's call this my box. So let me get down to QML file, my box, and we're just going to leave it as default. Notice how it's an item right off the bat. So let's go into the designer. Now, even though the item is a non-visual element, the designer can 100% help us out here. For example, we can say we want this to be an ID of element, and we want some properties here. So I'm just going to make a few. So item, property, and let's call this off color. And this is going to be a color, and let's move over here so you can kind of see what's going on. Like I said, this part gets a little squirrely, and I never could figure out why. So let me expand this out. There we go. Da 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 da. Boom, color. And it automatically changes over to a color. I'm just going to type in the word red. Bang. Now, if that's a little cumbersome for you, what you can do is you can go in here and just simply go, oh, what is this? Well, it's smart enough to know, hey, it has to escape those. There we go. We're going to make it actually work. So we'll call this on color. And let's call this default color. You see what I mean by sometimes I get a little frustrated and I like to work right in the code editor instead of playing around with this. I mean, look at all these things now. What is all this? We don't have all those. We only have 3 of them. But if I save, what happens? It still thinks I've got a bunch of them in here. It gets a little weird sometimes. So green, and let's change this to gray. All right. So what I want to do now is I want to flip back to the form editor, and I'm going to take a rectangle, just drag and drop him in. And you notice this checkerboard kind of denotes where it's going to be transparent because the item itself is invisible. And we're going to take this rectangle and we're going to, let's go ahead and set a property here. And we're going to set this to default color. And it's smart enough to figure that out. Now let's go over to our layouts. We're going to actually fill the parent, which is this little icon here. Or you could have done that in the actual text editor. Let's go ahead and go here, and let's go radius, and we want to say width. Again, we could have done something like that in here. See, radius, bang, bang. It's got that little chain here showing that it's a binding. Now, the base state here, you notice this little plus icon. Let's switch gears here for a minute. Let's go back here, go into the main, go into design. Now, if you remember, if we just click this, we get invalid property name states M16. That is frustrating. Let's go back into my box, go into design, and do the same thing. Suddenly, we have another state. Why? You cannot do this on a normal item. It's got to be a specific component. It's very frustrating the way that works. Anyways, now we have a state. So we have a base state, and then we have state 1. And let's call this on. So the on state, we're going to go in here, we're going to click our rectangle, and we're going to set that binding to on color. Drag this over here so you can see me hit OK. Do you see what's going on here? So we have a base state and an on state. So a state defines, you guessed it, what properties are changing. And if we go into the code, you can sure enough see property changes, target, color, on color for this state. Let's go ahead and make another state here. Oh, didn't like that. So let's click our base state. Still didn't like that. Wow. Oh, we made a bunch of them. That's one of the confusing bits here. So if you do what I did and you needed to get rid of some, you just click the little X here. And I'm going to scale this out so I have a little bit more real estate. It can be a little frustrating, and if there's just too many of them, you can just obviously go into the text editor and blow them away. Its default naming convention will just simply put a number by anything, and we're just going to grab some of these and go, bang, don't want those. And expected token is where we get stuck on. You can do it manually, or you can also do it via code, so let's just take this state, add a comma, bang, because this is an array. Without that comma, we're going to have a bad time. Now we have two states with the same name. That'll actually give us some sort of issue. So we'll say off. We're going to change our rectangle, which is our target, and we're going to change this to off color. So essentially, we have three states. We have default or base state, on, and off. And if we go into the form editor, we can select what state we want and then modify the properties for that specific state. Extremely powerful, also extremely confusing. And the fact that we can't do that on, you guessed it, a window, or a normal object as it's called, really screws us up. So what we can do now is we can actually take my box and plop it in here. Now, this is another little confusing bit. If we go in here, here is my box. You notice it's got this custom little thing. We can drag and drop it, but it's not there. It's just gone. Actually, it's just 0 by 0. So now we got to go, and you guessed it. 2000's a little big. Let's go with 200. There we go. Let's grab this little guy and move him over here. Ta-da! Very, very cool. Very easy. Let's actually take a mouse area and put that in, you guessed it, our little my box. I want that mouse area to take up all of that. So I'm going to go to layout, fill that parent. Now it's clickable. Going to go in here, and you can actually go to connections, bang, mouse area unclicked, or of course you can do this in the text editor. You have your connections on click. Now, sometimes you don't really want this connections. You want it up here. So you can 100% blow that away and go like this, and then just code right in here. The problem with doing this is the minute you do that, there is no connections in here. So if you're okay with that, this 100% works. So you can say if parent dot state, and this is just a string. And we're going to flip that off. And let's say let's go back into our component just because I want to check out those states. Yes, okay. So looking at these colors, so off is red, on is green, default's gray. So basically what we've made here is a mini stoplight. Let's go into design view. You can see it's in its default state. Save and run. And when we click this, ta-da, we are flipping that state. States are very, very advanced. We are just hitting the tip of the iceberg on this, so I don't want to confuse you too much, but basically think of a state as you can take an object, not a window. You can take an object and add states to it. Those states, you can take property changes. The editor's smart enough to know, hey, when you're modifying a state, the properties of that state change. So what you really need to understand is you can do some really cool things, but it can just take the complexity of this and shoot it right through the roof.